famous Indian head shake. Not yes, not no, but maybe. Always looking for a way out. Scant regard for rules or structures. Fatalistic, maybe even laid back. A chalta hai attitude and a Jugaad approach. So, who are we? Who are we, Devdutt? Because if we're people who believe in multiple life theories, if we're people who believe in destiny, because our multiple lives and our actions of previous lives lays out for us what's to come in the next life, then are we also people who are fatalistic and therefore accepting on the good side, but very laid back on the bad side? Why are we not as driven as the West?
Okay, for this I have to tell you two stories. So let's begin first with the story of a lady called Gautami. Now, Gautami is a widow and she has only one son. And one day the son goes into the forest and is bitten by a snake. And he dies. And the snake is caught by a hunter called Arjunika. And the hunter comes to Gautami and says, I have caught the snake who killed your son. Shall I punish the snake? And Gautami says, no, let it go. It will not bring my son back. It is not the snake that killed my son. It is karma that killed my son. My son had a karmic baggage which determined the time of his death and the circumstances of his death. And the snake was but an instrument. So there's no point being angry with the serpent. And this is classical fatalism, surrendering to the truth of the moment. So this is belief in destiny or karma. Okay. On the other side, we have another story. It's the story of Savithri. Now, who is Savithri? Savithri is a princess who chooses to marry a man destined to die a year later. She is a princess and she falls in love with this woodcutter and she says, I want to marry this man, even though the astrologers say, but he's going to die in a year's time. And she says, no, I love him, I'll still marry him. She marries him. On the day, 1 year later, when he dies, she follows the god of death. And the god of death is taking her husband's soul to the land of the dead. She follows Yama. And Yama is irritated and says that, why are you following me? Take care of your husband's body. And he says, that is but a vessel. The real thing which matters is in your hand. I want it back. And she says, no, according to the rule books,
his time is up.
So surrender to reality. And she refuses to surrender. She keeps following him. To the point comes where he gets exasperated and says, okay, fine, I'll give you 3 wishes. Anything but the life of your husband. So she says, first wish, let my father-in-law's fortunes be restored. The second wish, let my father's get an heir to his throne, because I'm the only child, I'm a daughter, I have married, so he has nobody in his life, let an heir be born to him. And the third, she says, let me bear Satyavan's sons. And Yama says, so be it, to all 3. And moves on to the land of the dead. After some time, he finds that Savithri is still following him. She says, but listen, I promised you 3 things, and I've given you those 3 things. And she says, I agree, thank you very much for that. But you see, the last wish was, I should be the mother of Satyavan's son. How can I bear his sons when he's dead? And Yama bursts out laughing and says that, oh, you clever lady, you are not only determined, but you're also clever. And you're also generous, because first you gave a wish to your father-in-law, then your father, only then to yourself. So you deserve the life of your husband back. So I give it back to you. In mythology, which talks about death cannot be overturned, you have the character of a woman who overturns the most ultimate fatalistic thing, which is death, and brings her husband back from the dead. The impossible happens. So where does it come from? It comes from what is called her desire. So desire is another force, or will, or karma. So karma on one side and karma on the other. Savitri's story on one side and Gautami's story on the other. These two are the 2 extremes of Indian thought.
So are we more like Gautami or are we more like Savithri?
Again, this has to be explained in the form of a story. You see, in the Upanishads, there's a very famous sage called Yagyavalkya. And Yagyavalkya says that when he's asked the same question, what is life? What is the
Who are
truth?
we?
Who are we? Is it about destiny or is it about desire? And he says, just visualize yourself traveling on a chariot which has two wheels. You know, two wheels. One is destiny or karma, the other is desire or karma. If you depend on one wheel too much, you will go around in circles. So you need sometimes, depending on the situation, you surrender to your destiny. Depending on the situation, you succumb to your desire and make your journey through life.
So that means we need to believe in one or the other based on the context.
Based on the context, on the situation. Jaisa yug, vaisa avatar. As is the situation, so should be your action.
How does this reflect in our business practices?
Just talk to people who do business with Indians. You'll notice how exasperated they are. Typically people from Europe and America who are binary thinkers. They want a yes and no answer.
Not a maybe.
Not a maybe. While Indians love saying maybe, mostly. Why do they say that?
Shayad.
Shayad. Because they're always thinking that there is perhaps a better way out. And this is the power of the Indian and the weakness of the Indian at the same time. We are constantly thinking contextually. We do not believe in standardized answers. We want everything is customized.
There's a beautiful word that describes this exact philosophy in business, right?
What is that?
It's Jugaad. You mentioned an interesting thing. You said it is our strength and our weakness.
Yes.
Is Jugaad good or is it bad?
Again, the answer is maybe. But you see, the word Jugaad is a North Indian word, and when you use the word, there is a sense implicit in the word. When you say the word is mischief, is prank, there's something not right about that word. There's a negative connotation to that word. And yet when the word Jugaad is used in the eastern parts of the country, like Odia, when my mother would use the word Jugadu, she didn't really mean it in the same way as you say it in Hindi. She would mean it in the form of resourceful.
Okay.
A resourceful person. A Jugadu is both a resourceful person, but he's also a person who is able to go through the cracks between the lines and find his way into it. He's able to improvise. He's able to innovate. So it depends on the situation and depends on the outcome. If the outcome favors us, we say Jugaad is good. If the outcome doesn't favor us, we say it's bad. The problem with the mindset of a Jugaad is that nothing can be taken for granted. It doesn't allow for planning.
Okay.
It doesn't allow for systems to be constructed. So you suddenly feel lost in a system where everybody is improvising. You're not sure what is happening out there. And that is a negative part of this, the Jugaad mindset. The good part is that it's more about relationships. It's more about people. It's about people feeling powerful, of saying that, no matter what the situation, no matter what the odds, no matter what the scarcity, we will figure a way out.
You've listed an equal number of pros and cons. So will Jugaad take us forward? Will it hold us back?
It is who we are. The fact is, it is who we are. The question is, it is up to us to harness it and take us forward. And if we don't harness it, if we wish it away, it won't go away. It will always be there. The question is, do we consider it as a factor when we are designing our cities, when we are making our plans, when we are making our business plans? We sometimes forget that Indians, the nature of who we are, and rather than looking down upon it and wishing it away and hoping to sort of condition and decondition Indians and make them something different, let's see this as an attribute and turn it into a strength, which sometimes we don't.
Can you really design something for people who are more creatively driven and therefore more unpredictable? Yes. It's difficult to do that, right? A system requires predictability.
Yes.
Very tough to harness unpredictable creativity to create systems.
This is a very good point. You see, it's about predictability. When you need predictability, you talk about processes and systems.
Right.
But you see, in a country like India, where everything is unpredictable, people have always relied on
relationship. But we make it so.
Now, how do we now create the innovative solution between?
Yeah.
That is the journey that we will take place in the next 10, 20 years as India becomes a more important. Let's look at examples that we can do. We can focus on results rather than on methods. This is one way of looking at it.
Okay.
This is one way. The other method could be, 80% will be defined by process, but 20% will be allowed for human freedom.
For Jugaad.
For Jugaad to happen. Recognize the fact that don't give everything in detail. You see what happens, especially in multinational organizations, there is a need to define everything to the last minute, and because we almost don't trust the human intelligence. We feel unless the manual exists, people can't function. Many people can function without the manual. Recognize that and say that, okay, broad frameworks and broad guidelines will be given. You see, somewhere along the line, we believe that people don't, with processes, we will force people to have integrity. Integrity has nothing to do with processes.
All right, as we're talking about this difference between India, creativity, Jugaad, West, systems, predictability, we have a question from your boss, Kishore Biani, and he quite beautifully articulates the difference in belief and behavior between the two, the West and the East. Let's listen into him.
What is the model one should adopt? I think we need to create a blend wherein processes and systems can be driven out of the Western way, but the softer side of dealing with human beings, with consumers, with organizational behavior, I think we need an Indian model of learning, development, and probably leadership.
Interesting, Devdutt, because this brings us back to the very first question that we started this series with, and that is there an Indian way of doing business, right? A way that blends the Western and the Eastern way of doing things, a way that blends the process and the people focus.
Yes.
Is there one?
Yes, there is. But to understand this, we have to understand, we go back into a little bit of history of management science.
Okay.
And you see, 300 years ago, a great revolution took place in Europe. Until then, Europe was controlled by the king, the monarchy, and the church, and their will was law. And then a whole bunch of people came and said that, it can't work like this. A church and kings cannot just decide what is right and what is wrong. Right and wrong has to be defined by logic. So this is where Voltaire came into the picture, and the Renaissance took place, and then Voltaire came into the picture, and then you have Hegel, and you have Newton, and the scientists, and the discoveries, the inventions took place, the Industrial Revolution took place, which was based on reason. It was called the Age of Reason and the Age of Industrial Revolution. Everything had to be logical, rational, real. Management science is a product of that way of thinking. But somewhere along the line, we assumed that what came from this thought was universal, and because it is logical. Now the problem comes is when these ideas came to the East, so they came to China, they came to India, they were imported and imposed. However, in the 1970s, something very interesting happened. A whole set of thinkers emerged again, who were called the post-modern thinkers, who said that what we assume to be logical is a function of culture. See, that is where I feel mythology has a lot to add to management. See, management emerged from the desire for creating an objective reality, which is absolute and perfect and independent of human beings. I'm saying that that is one half of the brain, the left brain. But can we pay attention to the other half of the brain, which has been ignored and rejected 300 years ago, the right half of the brain, which says that people are individuals, and every individual has a subjective reality. Respect and appreciate that subjective reality, otherwise conflict will happen.
Is there, and this is my final question to you, in this season of this series of Business Sutra, is there the embodiment of an organization anywhere in mythology? Does mythology talk about the perfect organization, the perfect business, the perfect enterprise?
Yes, it does. You see, why does an organization exist? First, let's ask that question. An organization exists because we can't cope with the forest, the wild nature. Wild nature frightens us. We want to feel safe and secure, and therefore we created human beings created organization. But the problem with organizations is organizations end up domesticating people. We domesticate, the wild is made tame. And we don't like domestication because we want to be ourselves, which is, we are born free and we want to live free lives. And so we are trying to negotiate a path between the forest and the organization, between being wild and being domestic. And to me, the best representation of this is Krishna's Rasa Leela. You see, what is the Rasa Leela? Rasa Leela is a dance. It's a dance which takes place in the forest. So forest, a place of fear. It takes place at night. It takes place outside the village, which means outside the organization. So there's no organization out there. And yet everybody who's participating in the Rasa Leela is completely unafraid. There is no fear. They are dancing and having a good time, and there's perfect organization. They form a circle, which means there is an organization there. And they're all circle because they're equidistant from the leader, who treats them equally, yet each one feels special. And that is Krishna in the center. And these are the gopis dancing around him in this wild forest. Now let's look at not afraid at all. And there's no reason for them to be there. They're not bound by custom, law, systems, processes, obligations. They're there of their own free will, and yet complying in creating this perfect circle. Nobody's coming in and disturbing the circle. In fact, if one does that, Krishna disappears. They say the fear returns. Now what are we saying? If the forest is the marketplace, can my leader be like Krishna, who gives me complete freedom to do what I want, and yet I voluntarily align to the system? So it means that where I do 100% or come on time and go on time and do 100% work, not because I'm obliged by a contract, but dil se, with passion, with bhakti. And that's the core of Indian philosophy. To do it with integrity and with devotion, not because a law tells me to do so. And can we achieve that? Well, that's the promised land of India.